Witches, rise up, return to your power. Witches, rise up, now is the hour. Witches, rise up, step up to your throne. Witches, rise up, it's time to come home. Witches, rise up, return to your power. Witches, rise up, now is the hour. Witches, rise up, step up to your throne. Witches, rise up, it's time to come home. We are the witches, we have returned. 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 The age of witches here now. 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 Witches, rise up, return to your power. Witches, rise up, now is the hour. Witches, rise up, step up to your throne. Witches, rise up, it's time to come home. Witches, rise up, return to your power. Witches, rise up, now is the hour. Witches, rise up, step up to your throne. Witches, rise up, it's time to come home. Welcome everyone to the Witches Rise Up Global Online Summit, calling you, witch, to rise up and return to your power, because we are the witches. Oh yes, we have returned. And I'm your host, Emer Stassen, and I'm really excited to welcome today's expert speaker, Jocelyn Starfeather. Hi, Jocelyn.
Hi, Emer. I'm so excited to be here. And yes, we have returned. Absolutely.
Yes, here we are. So I'll read your bio, Jocelyn. Jocelyn Starfeather is a visibility and thought leadership coach, spiritual alchemist, and founder of Sacred Planet. She shares shamanic and alchemical wisdom to guide courageous seekers in how we can co-create a revolutionary new world in alignment with Mother Earth and the vast intelligence of the cosmos. After a successful 15-year corporate career working in finance for major multinational companies, Jocelyn was thrust into a deep spiritual awakening. It was that awakening which turned her life upside down, and from which she emerged with a powerful understanding of how to use her intuition and healing abilities, aspects of herself that she'd never had access to before. She dove deeply into earth-based and shamanic practices, and she has studied alongside elders and wisdom keepers ever since. Today, she coaches and guides visionaries, revolutionaries, and change makers all around the world, guiding them to break free from everything that has held them back so they can joyfully offer their highest contribution to our collective future. Oh, yes. One of Jocelyn's favorite aspects of her work is guiding soul-led entrepreneurs to bring their important mission and message out to the global audience through creating their first online conference or summit, which I have had the utmost pleasure of being led through by you back in 2019. So yes, thank you for being here, Jocelyn. And your title today, which I can't wait to dive into, is Ancient Egypt and Gobekli Tepe, Portals to Remembering Our Magical Past. I meant to check the pronunciation there before we started.
It's definitely right.
Right. So yeah, would you like to share with us about the Egyptian mysteries?
Yes, I would love to. And yes, thank you so much, Emer, for the beautiful introduction. It's truly an honor to be here with you today. So yes, I'm going to actually share my screen because I have some beautiful slides. And the reason that I share slides on these topics is because you can really go into it, right? When you have the visual, when you can see the hieroglyphs or see the temples, it just really helps to make that shift in your consciousness as you're taking in the information. So let's go there.
I love it. It's almost like another level of transmission, isn't it?
Entering the portal. Yes, it really is.
Here we go.
Here we go. We're going in. So this image here on the left is the pyramid texts. Now, these are some of the most ancient texts that we have of the hieroglyphs that are intact. These are from 3500 BC or older. One interesting thing about Egypt, the more that I study it, is that we are discovering at every turn, it seems that the hieroglyphs over here, this pyramid over here, the Sphinx, for example, are actually much older than they were originally dated. And the Egyptologists tend to kind of cling to the original dates that were quoted 100 years ago, but we're really discovering these are far more ancient. So this one says, by the books, 3500 to 2500 BC, but I believe it's 3500 or much older. Now, this is a really magical text, and it is speaking about the resurrection ceremonies of ancient Egypt. And so we know that the temples in ancient Egypt were aligned with the stars, and particularly many of them were aligned with the Big Dipper or Ursa Major, the constellation. And this is because these stars can be seen in the sky, at least from Egypt, they can be, at any time of year. Most stars go through a period where they're not visible for a certain period of the year. But these stars are always visible in the sky every single night. And so they became known as the immortal ones. And immortality is a really big theme here. Now, if you know anything about ancient Egypt, you know that the tombs were a focus and that there was so much ornate decor and the hieroglyphs and the things that were placed in the tombs. This is not because the Egyptians were trying to take their food and their necklaces with them, right? This is because they knew that death is not an ending. Death is just a doorway. Death is just a chance to be rebirthed into a new life. So these, where we see the jewelry placed there or the bread placed there, right? This was a ritual that was done to honor the person who was deceased and to honor the new life that they were about to go into. In these texts particularly, it's about the resurrection ceremony of the Pharaoh. So the Pharaoh had to die during the time that he was king, or sometimes it was a queen as well, right? They had to die and be resurrected, like actually go to the other side of the veil and come back while they were still living, in order to prove that they were connected to those immortal stars, in order to prove that they were connected to the gods and goddesses and the vast realms beyond. And so this is a really powerful ceremony that's spoken about here, very, very magical, where people actually went to the other side of the veil and came back. So that's one aspect. Now, we see in the hieroglyphs that all understanding is a vast interweaving between the words, the images, our senses, which we use to interpret them, and our understanding of reality is deeply influenced by our perspective. Okay, so this is, of course, largely determined by our culture, our language, and our belief systems. The ancient Egyptians had an extremely different perception of reality than we have today, a very magical perception. Now, in these hieroglyphs here at the top, we have a lion. It's actually two lions with their heads facing opposite directions and with wings. So it's very reminiscent of the Sphinx. Now, these lions, their names are yesterday and tomorrow. And one head is looking to the east and one head is looking to the west, right? The east being tomorrow and the west being yesterday. Now, this is really, really powerful. Again, it's aligned with the stars. It's aligned with the horizon and taking note of what is rising on the horizon on the first day of spring, what is setting on the horizon on the autumn equinox. But it's really speaking to this much deeper understanding of reality. My teacher in Egypt, Patricia Iwan, really an incredibly amazing woman, she says that the ancient Egyptians had 360 senses, not just 5, right? So we really want to begin, as we're looking at ancient Egypt here, to think about reality as what if we weren't limited to only 5 senses? What if we had 360 senses? And there are actually studies being done. It's a project called Project Nature Connect that's happening off the coast of Oregon in the US, where they're taking people out into the wilderness and they're asking them to describe how many senses they feel, how many senses are they using to perceive that wilderness reality. And they've come up with over a decade of studies like this that we actually have at least 54 senses, not just 5. So it's really incredible, confirming what the ancient Egyptians have always knew. Now, another thing that comes through as you walk around and explore these temples and pyramids in ancient Egypt is this idea of real doors, false doors, and portals. You are just constantly walking through portals as you go through these temples. On the left here, this is a false door, which we often see in the tombs. This is from Princess Sesheshet Idut at Saqqara, and it's from about 23 BC or older. And so this is a door that a 3D human can't walk through, but the spirit can walk through, the soul, or the Ba in ancient Egyptian perception. The Ba could walk through this door, right? The spirit of the person. So that's interesting, right? Because it's a door that only gives entrance to a certain form of a being. Now in the center here, these are pillars in the center of Luxor Temple. And we see these pillars everywhere in Egypt. We see them in the hypostyle halls and Dendera and Abydos, which is just filled with these massive pillars. And as you walk into the temple, the ceiling gets lower, the floor gets higher until you come into this very compressed area all the way in the back, and that's the Holy of Holies. So you're really, again, you're entering a different reality as you walk through between these pillars. The pillars are also almost always in rows of 11, a very magical number. Now, this image on the right is the doorway to the inner sanctum at the Temple of Hatshepsut. And we weren't allowed to go in there, actually, but I took this picture from where the rope was across, where they wouldn't let us go past. And you can just see, looking in there, how magical it is. This is all the way at the back of the temple, where the ceiling is the lowest, the floor is the highest, and it's this sacred space that only the highest priests and priestesses or the pharaoh were allowed to go. And this is where a lot of the magic happened. So again, just like taking these in, right? Just like let yourself go into these portals. It's so magical. And it's such a different perception of reality. Now, the pyramids are a whole other conversation that I'll just give you a little piece of. These are the Pyramids of Giza. And I was so fortunate to stay in this 10th floor apartment overlooking the pyramids. And we got this amazing sunset view of them every single day. It was really powerful. These are so ancient, you know, some of the new research, and the Sphinx is here too. Where's the Sphinx? Is somewhere in this region down here. It's kind of hard to see in this picture. There is more and more confirmation that the Sphinx is from at least 10,500 BC, and that these pyramids may be much older than what is currently believed, which currently they say about 2,500 BC for the pyramids, for the biggest pyramid. Now, the thing about the pyramids is that they are made of millions of multiple ton granite blocks that were mined. We know exactly where they were mined from. We've matched up the blocks with where they came from. They came from 80 miles away, 80 miles south down the Nile River in a place called Silsila. Now, these blocks weigh anywhere from 1 ton to 25 tons. And most of those blocks would have sunk any boat that they tried to put them on to move them up the Nile River, right? So how did they even get them to the place? Once they were there, how did they move them into position? The pyramids are not, so if you think of a brick house, the bricks are in this very orderly fashion where it's like straight lines and straight lines. The pyramids, every single stone was cut to match its neighbor exactly. So there are very unexpected, you know, uneven lines between the two of them, but you can't slide a piece of paper between them. They're so exactly carved to one another. So this makes them very resistant to earthquakes or floods or anything else that may happen. It's really incredible. And so we don't know, you know, something more was going on here. Is it that they had help from extraterrestrials? Is it that they had such tremendous magical powers or powers of the mind that they could move blocks without having to lift them and, put them on a boat and do all these things that we picture today? We don't know, but there was something more going on there, right? So very multidimensional, otherworldly, like it's truly beyond what anybody in our modern world, scientists, researchers, anthropologists, it's beyond what anybody can comprehend. So this is the pyramids. Another thing that's important to note is that there was water flowing in very specific channels underneath all of the temples, and actually is still flowing today under most of them. This is the hieroglyph for water. It's this zigzaggy line, very powerful. And this image here is Thoth, the god Thoth, who is the god of sacred architecture, language, the hieroglyphs, magic, alchemy, and he's also the god of the moon. He is holding he holds all different versions of a caduceus. Now, this is an interesting version of a caduceus with water going up the staff and then holding 3 what looks like lanterns. Interesting. Some of these we still don't know completely what they mean. But water, and this is in the temple of Edfu, and it was in a section where they were describing the building of the construction of the temple. So they had water flowing in specific channels beneath the temple to carry the energy toward the inner sanctum. So not only is the ceiling getting lower, the floor is getting higher as you go more toward the back, but these water currents are coming together. And there are some places where you can stand in the temples where the water currents below are swirling because a bunch of them have come together in this place. And you'll stand there and your body starts to go in a spiral because the energy of the water is coming up through the floor and is like shifting the energy, shifting the frequency of everything above. It's really powerful to actually feel that in the body. So one more thing about building the temples. There was this ceremony called the stretching of the cords. Now, Sechet here is standing behind Thoth. She was the companion of Thoth. And she always has this 7-pointed star above her head that represents the Pleiades. But she would be consulted. So this is a goddess that the pharaohs and the high priests and priestesses would consult with her before the foundation for any temple was laid. And she was consulted to decide what stars or constellations did this temple need to be aligned with. And then they would take a cord. Once that decision was made, they would take this long cord and they would place it down on the ground, and that would be the outline of the temple. And it was very important. She was always involved with this. And over here on the right, we have the pharaoh raising the 2 obelisks. This again is at Edfu. And this was raising the obelisks of Edfu as they were doing the stretching of the cord ceremony and beginning to lay the foundation of the temples. So you can just feel from all this, that there was this deep ritual, ceremonial aspect to everything, to every part of life. So it's really powerful to consider this in our modern context, How can we bring this type of magic, this type of ritual and ceremony back into our daily lives, into everything from including how do I, where am I going to put a new piece of furniture in my home? Or how am I going to decide which home to move into? Or how am I going to celebrate the birth of a child? Everything, these modern or these normal day-to-day occurrences or normal life occurrences that we have, how can we really make them into a ritual or a ceremony and bring the magic in? And how would that shift our perception and our appreciation of life itself and these beautiful events that we get to do when we're in these 3D bodies, So yeah, as it says here, the hieroglyphs are portals to a very different way of perceiving reality. Now I'm going to skip through just a little bit here because I want to share about Gobekli Tepe, and then I want to welcome your questions, Emer. So Gobekli Tepe, has changed everything in our perception of human history. Gobekli Tepe is in modern day Turkey. In ancient times, this was called Anatolia. And it was fairly recently discovered. It was, I believe it was in either 2004 or 2008 that Gobekli Tepe was discovered. And so before Gobekli Tepe was discovered, it was really commonly believed that the Sphinx and the pyramids were no more than 2500 or 3500 BC. And Stonehenge, is about 3500 to 4000 BC. And so it was thought that humans did not reach the capacity to create these kind of structures until about 4000 BC at the earliest. Then we found Gobekli Tepe. Now, this has been very, very reliably and conclusively dated to be constructed between 9600 to 8000 BC. So that's 11,600 to 10,000 years ago, right? And this is dated to the time before that we don't find any pottery, okay? Or during this time, right? We don't find any pottery. We thought humans were very, very, what is the word? Incapable, basically, right? Like hunters and gatherers, like barely surviving, right? And this time frame, the 9600 BC, was the end of the last ice age. So this raises enormous questions about how are these people able to just spring out of an extremely severe ice age, where it would have been extremely difficult even just to find food every day and survive, to suddenly be building these structures, which I'll show you in a minute, the detail, and these are megalithic structures. So it really blows all known conceptions of the origins of human civilization out of the water. And there were people who were studying and concluding, like Robert Bauval, for example, and Graham Hancock, were making these conclusions that the Sphinx had to be from 10,500 BC because of the way that it's aligned with the stars. And everybody was like, no, that's ridiculous. How could you say that? And then Gobekli Tepe was discovered, right? And now they can say, well, if we could build Gobekli Tepe, we could build the Sphinx. And so it really just shifts everything. So here are some facts about Gobekli Tepe. So these are megalithic structures. The columns are 6 meters or 20 feet high and weigh around 20 tons each. So we're looking at, that's similar to the blocks used to build the pyramids. This predates Stonehenge by more than 4,000 years. And like Egypt, the older structures and carvings that we looked at are actually more refined and precise. So the technology devolves as it goes forward in time. That's really fascinating. So we were at some very, very high point of civilization at this 9600 BC mark, and we actually came down in refinement and quality after that. So as I said before, how could we have sprung out of this extremely difficult ice age period with the ability to build this, right? And again, there was either a previous highly advanced civilization that they proceeded from. This is where we come into conversations about Atlantis, which we're not going to get into today, but that's one theory, which we have not yet found conclusive evidence of, or they received assistance from the stars or some other beings that we don't know about. And we'll see on another slide here, there's a vast array of animals. It's actually reminiscent of Noah's Ark. So again, that date 9600 BC was the end of the last ice age. It is also the date, the approximate date of the Great Deluge or the Great Flood that was told of in the Bible. So interesting that there's so many different animals that we see here. Is this some kind of memorial or monument or ceremonial celebration of the flood and what was saved from the flood? Maybe. That's one theory. And then here we have human-bird hybrid images that match the bird-headed gods of other cultures. So that is reminiscent of the Anunnaki from Mesopotamia, Quetzalcoatl from Mexico, Thoth and Horus from Egypt. It's just really like, wow, this was something big. So these are the columns that are 6 meters, 20 feet tall. And they're all over. They're in these circular kind of enclosures. And each one of these is another circular enclosure. And we've only unearthed like 5% of them, something like that. There's so many more to be uncovered. And this just gives you an idea of some of the animal carvings. So this was an auroch, which was a precursor to our modern day cows. It was like a wild cow. This is a duck, and this is a crane. Here's a fox. Here's a very interesting, like full 3D image of some kind of predator. We don't know exactly what this was. Maybe something that's gone extinct. Here's a vulture. This is crazily reminiscent of the ball games in the Aztec or in the Mayan society, right? And there's this vulture with a smaller vulture. There's a scorpion at the bottom of this one, which has been reburied, which is so funny because if you're an astrologer, Scorpio is like what is hidden, and they re-hid it once they found it. Here's some more birds, but the pillars are anthropomorphic, so they're in human form. This is like a human arm with bent at the elbow, and the head, the pillar of the stones are believed to be representing human heads. So it's very advanced. It's really fascinating, right? What is here? And then one more thing I'll share before I end the slideshow here is very recently they've discovered another site in Turkey called, and I may be pronouncing this a bit wrong, but Bonkuklu Tarla. This was the discoveries there have just been expanded as recently as 2019, where they found a large communal building and evidence even of a sewer system. And these are dated to 10,000 BC, so 12,000 years ago. And you can see it's a bit reminiscent of Gobekli Tepe in this kind of circular enclosure. But wow, you know, we keep discovering more. It's like now the discoveries keep coming out. So what I want to just say here is, I think I do have this. Yeah, we have access to so much more than we know, right? So witches rise up. We are so powerful. We just can't even imagine how powerful we are. So we have all of these different sites, the Pyramids of Giza, Gobekli Tepe, the snake goddess, and other mysterious artifacts from Knossos in Crete. We have Stonehenge and Avebury. We have Gunung Padang in Indonesia, which might have been Atlantis. That's a whole other track we could go down. Megalithic temples of Malta, which are extremely magical. The temples in Mexico from the Mayan and Aztec culture, right? There was so much more going on in these very ancient times than we have been told, and that then has been written in the history books. So, as all of us know here who are part of this, of Emer's beautiful event, right? A huge part of our role is to come back into connection with this divine matrix, with the magic, with the multidimensional capacities that we actually have, right? And with the infinite connections between all things, and really bring this knowledge back. So I will pause there as far as the slideshow and stop sharing. And yeah, hopefully those are helpful in going in to the portals.
That is just amazing. I'm taking a huge deep breath, just letting all of what you've shared integrate within me. It's just amazing. And the carvings and how well preserved Gobekli Tepe is.
Yes, well, it was all buried by the people. The people at some point in time filled in all of those enclosures with dirt, and even with trash from their own culture, which is how we know even more about them. It's fascinating. So they were extremely well preserved because they were never out in the weather and in the elements. It's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. That's what really struck me. And, you know, the symbolism and the animals and what it may have stood for. And also all that you've shared, because this event it's been broadcast over the winter solstice, when Newgrange, or Brú na Bóinne in Irish, is aligned with the rising winter solstice sun. Yes. You know, and when you talk, for me, there's so many resonance and similarities between what you've shared and the ancient sites in Ireland as well. you know, the symbology, that symbol for water, it's like, you know, it's like, I know this, I've seen this, you know, it's on the carvings on the rocks and in Ireland. And also that the stretching of the cord, because I've often wondered, like, how did they align it? How did they build them? And is this an actual cord that they would have mapped out?
Yeah, in Egypt it is. It's an
Yes.
actual, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I find that really fascinating. And also, what's the other aspect is when you talked about some of the stones came from over 80 miles away. You know, that's a similar story for some of the big stones in the sacred sites in Ireland as well. They can have come from that distance. So there's so many similarities. You know, it's really, you know, were they communicating through telepathy? As you say, were they connected to the star beings and extraterrestrials? Oh,
Yeah.
I feel they were.
They were doing something very special, you know,
Yeah.
there's no doubt about that. And yeah, they just had access to so much more power within themselves, and also in the natural world and the elements around them. And the, you know, for Egypt at least, and probably for many cultures, this connection between the above and below, right? They knew it was so critical to align their temples in the below on earth with all that was above, right? And that gives them power. There were so many ways that they were adding these magical powers to everything they created. And yes, so many of the temples in Egypt are aligned with the sun on the solstices, and Gobekli Tepe as well. You know, these ancient people were so advanced in their astrology and astronomy. It's really astounding.
And that so much more continues to be uncovered that has been hidden.
Yeah.
And probably on purpose until we're ready. That's my feeling, is that until we're ready. And we're ready now, some of us.
Yes,
we think we are.
More and more of us.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you then, because I know you visited Egypt, as you shared, and you're going again soon.
Yeah, I will be there in starting November 27th. So very soon. Yeah.
Amazing. And for you personally, because you share about this, the magic and bringing that back in for these times, what's your draw then to Egypt in particular and these amazing sites?
Yeah, well, part of it is just, you know, the sacred instructions that come through where, you know, I hear from my guides and in my dreams and in my meditations, like, it's time to go back. So that's part of it. But in Egypt, what really fascinates me especially is looking for the deeper layers of things. Like we know that there are these chambers and tunnels, like subterranean chambers below the pyramids, but nobody's really allowed to explore there because the Egyptian government is afraid that will compromise the structure of the pyramids, you know, standing on the earth above. So that's one thing. Like, I want to go there. I want to talk to people who might know more about that. I want to learn. I want to, you know, just have these conversations and see what's possible. I feel like something around that is going to be opening up to explore more. So who knows? We'll see. Also, going below, we know that the temples like Dendera, the temple to Hathor, Abydos, which is a temple primarily to Osiris, but also to other gods and goddesses. The ones we see, the ones that we can visit today, are just the most recent iteration of that. And if we dig below, there was an earlier version from maybe 4,000 or 5,000 years before that. And then there was an earlier version from 4,000 or 5,000 years before that. They go back so far, and they were, you know, naturally in the desert, especially, the sand tends to cover things up over time. And so we know there's so much more there. So just to even sit in the temples and ask my guides, like, ask the energy there to like reveal, oh, what's below, what more is there to know that, you know, was maybe lost from that version to this version. It's, for me, it's very much about looking for what is hidden and what is beneath what we can actually see with our eyes. Yeah.
And all that you share then as well while you're there, and then in your teachings, that weaves into your teachings from what you've experienced, is really powerful.
Yeah. It's shifted my perspective completely. The first time I went to Egypt in January 2021, my whole perception of reality has changed, and what, and what is possible. And that was my experience there, is that, entering into the space where there are many, many, many different realities. We kind of go through our lives with this perception that, oh, okay, well, this is how reality works. I go to work, I take care of my kids, or whatever the things are. There are so many other realities available to us. And the more of them that we can tap into, the more multidimensionally and magically we can live. And we can access many different realities in one lifetime, many different dimensions and portals.
Yeah, I know that would be a huge comfort for people watching, for sure.
It's so important. It's such an important part of the remembrance. It really is. And yeah, there are so many very traumatic and difficult things going on in our world today. And that's not all. There is also this much bigger plan unfolding. And one thing I'll share about these times we're in right now, and I know this event will be airing in December 2021. That's going to be an extremely powerful time with an eclipse on December 4th. That's going to be really bringing us into our future, our purpose, our where the direction that our souls are pulling us toward in this lifetime. It's really important to know that the more in highest integrity and the truth of our heart that each of us can be as individuals, the more we're going to receive the gift and blessing of these transits, these intense times, right? And so this is kind of my call to action for everybody now at the, as we get near the end of 2021, is really just check in with yourself, do your daily meditations where you're getting so clear in the center of yourself about who am I really, right? What am I here to bring? What are the actions I need to take in this lifetime? And just come into deepest, highest integrity and truth with yourself and speak from there, create from there, make decisions from there. And you're going to be lifted up and so guided and supported and protected on your path as we go through this intensity. And you will see miracles you never imagined. Really, really and truly, this is a time when the impossible is becoming possible, but we also just have to do the hard work, right? And be really, really clear and highest integrity in all that we do.
Yeah. And the courage to actually to go there, almost to sink into that, for that alignment to really happen.
And to really trust it. It takes a lot of courage and fierceness to really trust that fully.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Would you like to share about the natural laws and cosmic order?
Yes, well, so some of that was in the slides, but I'll just say that the goddess Ma'at, okay, so the goddess Ma'at of ancient Egypt, she is the one who holds the scales. And we see her in the astrological sign of Libra, which is the scales. She holds the scales. And if you ever see her, she always has her wings out, very balanced, these huge wings, right, out on either side of her. And she stands for natural law and cosmic order. This was extremely important to uphold that. And it's exactly what we were just talking about, right? Truth and integrity that we know is at the core of each of us, that we know is at the core of all creation. It's really special. I'll share one more slide about this so you can actually visualize it. When the Pharaoh would come into rulership, he would say the oath of Ma'at. And this is an image of the Pharaoh Seti I. He's holding the goddess Ma'at in his palm of his hand, a little tiny version of her. She has her ostrich feather on her head and the Ankh here. And so he is pledging to the gods Osiris and Isis the pledge of Ma'at, the oath of Ma'at. And so he is saying, you have handed me this kingdom in perfect cosmic order. And I vow to you, I promise you, I will take care of it in full alignment with truth and integrity and balance. And I will give it back to you at the end of my reign, at the end of my life, in the exact same divine cosmic order as you have given it to me, right? Oh, what beauty. And the children of ancient Egypt were taught or raised from the very beginning that their primary purpose was to serve Ma'at, to serve cosmic truth and justice and maintain that harmonic balance of the universe. So I have chills every time I talk about this. It's just so powerful. And just imagine if our governments today were run like this, right? Or decisions on our global scales were made in this way, right? What a different world it would be. And so we can begin each in our individual lives or each in our own communities and families to really connect in with this, to live in this way, to bring our awareness to the importance of upholding the cosmic order. One more thing I'll say about Ma'at is that she's the one at the end of the life, when you leave the human body and you go through these certain steps once you pass away in the ancient Egypt perception of the afterlife. And one of those steps that's very important is your heart is weighed on the scales of Ma'at. So your heart is placed on one side of the scale. Her ostrich feather is placed on the other side, and your heart must be at least as light or lighter than the feather in order for you to proceed. So there's something there about lightness of heart, right? Not weighing our heart down because we've told a lie, or we're feeling guilty, or we're feeling shame, or all of these heavy emotions, right? Really focusing on how can we be light? How can we feel free? How can we, let ourselves be uplifted because we know we're living in highest integrity and alignment with the cosmic order at every moment and working to maintain that and strengthen that? Then our hearts will be so light. And so we'll be much more joyous during life. And we get to cross through and into the joys of the afterlife and the next life when our heart is lighter than a feather.
Yeah. Gosh, I can really feel the heat and the lightness of that. And as you say, imagine if our governments or our children were taught this in school as well. Oh, what a different story this can be. Really powerful. Really powerful. And I was just reflecting on Ma'at and being Libra and her wings and being the balance. It's so beautiful. And that in our household, 3 of us, myself and 2 of my children, are Libra rising.
Oh, beautiful.
And our puppy is Libra sun sign. So there's a lot of balance and justice, in our family.
Yeah, really beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, gorgeous. Yeah. Wow. So would you like to speak about the precession of the equinoxes and how this relates to our rememberings?
Yes, absolutely. This is a really big topic. So again, I'm going to give you kind of the condensed version. So the precession of the equinoxes is a 26,000 year cycle. And the reason that we have this is that the Earth's axis is a bit tilted and it wobbles a little on that axis. Now, if you go online, you can see a much more detailed scientific astronomical description of this, but it is a known astronomical, event that occurs. And so basically the way that we see this from Earth is that the stars we see in the sky, and particularly the North Star or the pole star, changes over time. And the ancient people were very, very aware of this, and they honored this precession of the equinoxes with their temples. For example, one of the reasons that Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock, their research shows that the Sphinx must have been constructed in 10,500 BC is because in that year, at the spring equinox as seen from Egypt, on the very day of the spring equinox, the constellation that would be rising at the horizon at the time of sunrise was Leo, the lion. Okay, the constellation of Leo, the lion. What we see there now is Pisces, and that's why we're in the age of Pisces right now. Back then, it was Leo rising on the horizon at sunrise on the vernal equinox, and that was the age of Leo. Now, it makes a lot of sense if we look at the whole big picture of this and all that the ancient Egyptians knew, and many things that are written on the inscriptions, like the inscription of what the Sphinx is holding between its paws speaks to this, right? There's many, many clues we have that the Sphinx is a lion, and it was put there as a marker of that time. And that time was considered by the ancient Egyptians to be Zep Tepe. It was the beginning of all times. 10,500 years ago 10,500 BC was 12,500 years ago. 13,000 years is half of the precession of the equinoxes. And what we know is that the Great Flood, the Great Deluge, occurred at that time. Okay. Or had just ended, and they were rebuilding their civilization. They were able to come back and build again. And apparently they were building Gobekli Tepe over in Turkey, right? And they were building the Sphinx in Egypt, all around this same time frame. And something else that we know about the precession of the equinoxes is that the major ice ages and major events like that Great Flood tend to happen every 26,000 years, or half of that cycle every 13,000 years. Now, why this is really important for us right now is it's been about 13,000 years since the last ice age ended and the last flood happened. So this is one of the many ancient prophecies that are pointing to this time we're in right now as a time of tremendous change. Very fascinating, because all the ancient cultures all around the world were aware of the precession of the equinoxes, and each on their own different calendars. So we have the Mayan long count calendar. We have the calendars that we find in Dendera, the zodiacs in Egypt. We have calendars in Asia and in the Hindu tradition. All of these from all around the world. I'm sure there are some in the Celtic and Nordic cultures as well, right? All of these calendars point to right now, the time that we're living in right now, as a time of massive change and transformation. Now, we don't know if that will come about just through, like, is it just happening through us? It's this great awakening and remembrance, right? We know COVID is a big, major, thing that is happening, is changing our whole world. Will there be other events? There's talk of it's going to get really cold, right? Rather than global warming, we're actually going to go into a colder period, like a mini ice age kind of thing. Like, there's so many theories about what could happen. So the message here for all of us is we are in a time of great change. And so it's really important for each of us to be resilient, to really be open-minded with the change that's coming through, to know that more dramatic things could happen. And it is okay. It's all in service to this much higher plan, bigger picture for humanity. And really, if we look at our world, we need to change. We really need to change as far as how we're treating the environment, as far as what's going on in our governmental systems, our educational systems, our medical systems, like everywhere, every angle that we look. And again, for us as humans, how we're perceiving reality, we really, my guides have told me we need a tidal wave of humans to really wake up and remember and begin living in alignment with the magic again, in reciprocal relationship and connection with the earth once again, right? So the more that we come into this remembering, we do the inner work to fully remember and start living in these ancient ways again, the easier it's going to be for us, right? And the more that we'll be able to adapt and change and really be in connection with the bigger plan. But there are big things afoot right now, essentially, is the message here. We're living at this very momentous time. And, those of us who are alive right now, we're meant to be here. There's no doubt, right? We're meant to be part of that tidal wave if we're ready, if we're all of those attending your event here, I'm sure, Emer, are part of that tidal wave. We're really meant to be creating and helping to co-create these major changes in our world today.
Yeah, it really feels like that. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing about the procession, such a complex topic, so beautifully. And when you said the words, the tidal wave, it's a poem I wrote recently was around speaking up and sharing our voices, but not just that, flooding the world with our voices. So yeah, I love this, like tidal waves of witches. Come on, we're all together supporting each other. Yeah,
Yes.
really powerful. Woo. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share about your topic or remembering the magic?
Yeah. Well, I would just say for everybody listening, again, I know because you're attending this event, you are already very open and ready for the changes and ready to do the deep work. And so I just want to offer everybody a message of strength and courage. And we're in this together. You know, we're living at such a momentous time. The magic is coming back. I'll share one other prophecy briefly because it really ties in with this. So in the book, in the amazing book, The Time of the Black Jaguar, Arkan Lashwala speaks about the cycles of humanity. And again, this is based on 26,000 year cycles. It's based on the precession of the equinoxes. Now he's speaking from a Peruvian and an Incan perspective from South America. And so he says there are 3 time periods that we go through in every 26,000 year cycle. The first one is a time, it's the beginning time, like in ancient Egypt, and they would say it was the Tepe time. This is the beginning time. This is the time when all of the magic is available to us. Okay, and then we begin to forget the magic, and we go through this period, a longer period of forgetting, and wars happen, and separation happens, and big breakdowns happen for humanity. And then we enter into the last of those 3, which is a period of renewal. And this is the briefest time, but it's the most intense. And it is the time when the magic is starting to come back in, because we're going back to the beginning again. The magic is coming back. And there has to be immense, massive, all-pervasive change occurring so that the magic can return, so that we can remember, so that we can go back to our original state of beauty and magic. And so that's what we're in right now. And and he says we are at the end of the 5th 26,000 year cycle of humanity. That's what it in that Incan perspective that he carries, that's where we are. And we're about to begin this 6th 26,000 year cycle. And so we are just on the brink, right? We're on the cusp of launching into this time when we're back to that first stage where all of the magic is fully available to us. And I just think all of us witches are feeling that rising up so strongly within us, right? It's like the magic just wants to break through and like come fully back and be fully here with us. So let that happen in every way that you can. It is wanting to happen through us, each of us individually, as well as in the collective, but we carry it in the collective. We each carry it individually and bring it forward, each in our own magical ways. So whatever your magic is, keep doing it, do it more, trust it, right? Don't doubt it. It's really happening right now. It's really big. And it's just so important to bring it, witches, in every way that you can.
Bring it, witches, come on. And what you said there when you said our original state, this is our original state, the integration of the magic, the remembering, the rising up, our sharing our truth. Yeah, so powerful.
In that original state, there are no limits to what we can do. We are so deeply connected with the matrix. There's this quote from The Spell of the Sensuous, another amazing book by David Abram, where it says the animals could talk to the humans and the humans could talk to the animals. And that's just the way it was. That's just the way it was, right? And so that's the kind of place we're going back to. So much magic in every way.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. Thank you for being you, for being such an amazing mentor and guide, and for sharing this message. Yeah, so honored to walk this path with you.
Thank you so much for the incredibly beautiful work that you are doing to help us all awaken and remember our witchy power and all of our powers. So beautiful, the work you're doing, Emer.
Thank you. We're rising up together.
Yes, we certainly are.
Gorgeous. And for everyone watching, there will be links to connect with Jocelyn below this video. And yeah, we'll see you again soon. I could keep talking, but it's like, yes, see you again soon. Thank you so much. Witches, we are rising, rising, rising. Witches, we are rising in the 21st century. Thank you for inviting your witch out to play today.